Hi, everybody. Jeff Toyster here, and I am joined today by my friend Nate Brown, co-founder of CX Accelerator. And we're going to talk today about using unstructured feedback. So before we get into that, Nate, how are you today?
I'm good. What's up, Jeff? Thank you for having me today.
Oh, I'm excited you're here. It looks like a beautiful day in Nashville, Tennessee. You're outside, and I'm
Yep.
in San Diego, and I'm inside, so I'm jealous of you.
Well, we both got sweet shirts on. The house was a little messy, and it's beautiful out here, so why not?
That's awesome. So one of the things, the reason I wanted to talk to you is I think you've come up with a really novel way of capturing and using unstructured feedback from your customers, and we're going to get to that in just a moment. But first, I'm gonna put you on a spot with a different question. Do you survey your customers?
Oh, yeah.
How do you do that? What kind of surveys do you launch?
Well, we've got Confirm It. In my day-to-day job as a practitioner, I use Confirm It. I've got some people I help on the side and some other things, and everything from SurveyMonkey to Qualtrics to a whole variety of customer experience management platforms. Also, I've been using CloudCherry more recently, and the survey is a survey. I mean, it's way more about the experience that you create around that survey and what you do with the results than the survey itself.
So it's interesting you say that. I want to get into that in a moment. But the flip side of that is if a survey is a survey and it's part of the experience, we're capturing some data, I imagine there's some limitations as well. Like what sort of limitations have you experienced with surveys?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest one is you have to trigger the survey at a very specific time. You've got to design a process in which you can give a survey to a customer at a very specific moment in their journey. Well, think about all the other moments happening in their journey where you don't know to trigger a survey, or it just doesn't make sense to do so. And those are the moments where you've got to get a little bit creative. You got to get a little bit raw and organic and find ways to just have a conversation with them and or reach into that journey another way and get that feedback.
There's something you're saying, I think that we're missing out on a lot of times in organizations is this word conversation. And we have conversations with our customers every single day. We have a lot of conversations. Only a small percentage of those customers are completing surveys even about those conversations. So we're clearly missing out on something.
Yes.
The challenge that I hear customer service leaders say over and over again is I don't have a good way to capture, organize, and analyze data based upon all of these conversations, and especially smaller companies. And I think you've come up with a solution that isn't artificial intelligence, doesn't require huge technological infrastructure. Tell me about this solution for capturing and doing something with all this conversational data.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there is an AI component if you have a high volume
Okay.
coming in. Otherwise, it would be almost impossible to process. But I'll get there. You get to make a choice. If you want to be more organic with this process, or if you want to try and automate at least a component of it. But let me introduce to you what we did. So, I mean, it was this whole dilemma, as you're saying, Jeff, the fact that we're having these conversations every day, especially in the contact center. Think about how much feedback an agent gets every single day, meaningful feedback from customers that is never going to end up on a survey. I mean, I could guess somewhere between 1% to 3% of that organic feedback is actually going to make it to a survey. So, I mean, how can we start to really capture that treasure trove of data? And that was keeping me up at night. I'm thinking there's got to be a way to do this, but I don't want to create another data silo. I mean, I want to bring it into harmony with the survey data because that is still very valuable. And at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is understand our customers better and fill in the gaps to get a fuller picture. So what we did is we introduced a little USB web key. And this, for those that might just be listening, it's a small device. You plug it into a docking station and or a USB drive on your computer, and you hit a button. So it's a physical representation of something very important, Jeff, and that's the fact that you are the voice of the customer. And it's one thing just to send out a link and say, hey, anytime you get feedback, click on this link. And we've done that, and we have that too. But there's something magical that happens when you say, you're the voice of the customer. Here's something to prove it that you can put in your hands. You can see it, you can feel it. We even have buttons that flash, just as that reminder every day of you get to be that voice of the customer.
And Nate, when you're saying you get to be the voice of the customer, you're talking about someone on the front line.
Correct.
Hearing all this information and is wondering, what do I do with it?
Right. So, I mean, we just created a simple form, but the challenge is, how do you get somebody to the form? How do you get them to care enough and to remember, as soon as they get feedback from a customer, I've got to get this in here. And this was bridging the gap for us. Just a simple button that they could press to get them there. But the button isn't the magic. I mean, it's a whole culture around this. I mean, as you know, Jeff, and I mean, your service culture handbook says this so well. You've got to get people obsessed with wanting to help the customer and actually caring about what they say first. Otherwise, it doesn't matter what Chotsky you buy. You got to change the culture around the fact that customer feedback is critical. It's a gift, and everybody that's getting it needs to be giving it to a centralized engine so that the company can take it, respond to it, value it, and close the loop on it.
And so what happens there? Because it's interesting. You're already taking something where you're making it tactile, and by having a button that I can see and it's not lost in all the programs on my computer screen,
right?
I get some feedback from a customer that I think is worth sharing. So I push the button. Now what happens? How does that feedback get captured? What do you do with it?
So for us, we just created a custom form. And I would recommend you create that custom form in the same tool, the same CRM in which you're generating surveys. And you're just asking a couple simple questions. Who is this customer? What stage of the journey are they in? And what happened? And here's where you have an optional field. And what we did is we have a customer sentiment value where the agent or whoever, I mean, it's anybody that's a customer-facing representative of the organization. Could be a sales rep, could be somebody in accounts payable that's getting all this feedback about a barrier to a customer wanting to pay an invoice. Could be an executive on an airplane sitting next to a customer on an airplane. Anybody that's getting this feedback has the ability to bring it into a centralized engine and then select, how does the customer feel right now in this point of their journey? It's everything from very happy down to very frustrated. So that gives us a little bit of a more statistical level data point where we can take, okay, so we know that the customer is in their implementation stage, as an example. Here's the verbatim comment that we got. Here's what they're experiencing. Here's how they feel. And I bet you already know where I'm going with this. What better way to power a journey map than just that data right there? I mean, that's enough right there to tell a very compelling narrative about the customer, the touch points that they're experiencing, what's happening on those touch points and how they feel about it. But then you can take the comments that you're getting, and there's a couple things you can do there. So you can either manually process that, and in the same way that you would tag it and do everything with the survey data that you get, the open-ended survey comments, you could do that. Or here's where the AI component comes in. If you've got a high volume coming in, you can do some kind of text analysis on that, where you can put a layer of intelligence on that, and you can get some form of customer sentiment based on the text analysis. So if the agent is copying and pasting an email in, or if they're just typing in a quote that the customer said over the phone, you run that text analysis on there, you can get some concept of customer sentiment and let that analysis process do some of your tagging and get your trends out.
So it's interesting that you talked about capturing these data at different stages and entering some basic information like customer sentiment. I imagine if I'm a contact center leader and I'm listening to this interview, one of the things I think about immediately is, well, I probably think of two things, but one is, how long is it taking my agents to enter this data? The next call is coming in, or the next email, or the next chat, the next tweet. How long is it taking them to push the button, fill out the form?
I mean, it's going to be 1.5 minutes.
Okay.
So we implemented a 2-minute wrap time to properly document the call. And in my mind, this is part of documenting the interaction that you had. And so not only do we have the button, I mean, and that's going to be really good for like a salesperson and other folks. In the contact center, as they log their case ticket, I mean, they're already documenting their call. We have another tab in that case field for feedback only. I mean, Jeff, if you break down a service interaction, there's two things going on. There's the resolution, there's the practical need that the customer has to resolve, and then there's like their emotions around it and what they're thinking and feeling about it. And that's where we get to get creative and try and actually become more proactive and do customer experience instead of just customer service. Let's solve the problem. And we need to go through the right channels to, as quickly and efficiently as possible, solve the problem. But if that's all we ever do and we're stuck in that mode, when are we ever going to actually get proactive to fix it up the stream so that the problem can go away? And so, I mean, this shifts the mentality of everybody in the customer service environment, including the agents, because they get to play a role in this. And one of the best things that we did is not just have them enter the data. They get to come and present the data to a cross-functional group of leaders in a customer-first format meeting and be a part of the solution. Because I mean, I'm sure you remember from your time, Jeff. I mean, being in a contact center, it can feel very victimizing in terms of you're always receiving problems and you never get to participate in trying to solve them. This puts the power in the agent's hand to try and get more proactive and get creative and do real customer experience.
And so what you're really talking about, Nate, is more of a system. It's not just logging this into a form or it just sits alongside other survey data we don't use. So people are talking about it and sharing it in meetings. I imagine we're analyzing this to say, what are our ecstatic customers saying? What are the pain points of our angry customers?
Right.
Is there, I think that probably the pushback you would get, I imagine, in other organizations, because you said something earlier about you plan on about 1.5 minutes to enter this data. So I think a couple questions that go with that is there an expectation that you complete one of these with every customer interaction, or is there only something noteworthy? And probably the second question is, how does that data pay for itself? I think I could see it, but if someone's listening to this interview, how does that data pay off? But maybe we'll start with, do you do this for everybody?
No, that's a great question. I should have covered that. I apologize. Now, I mean, this is not going to be every call.
Okay.
I mean, words that I use is meaningful customer feedback. So if you've got somebody on the line that is praising the organization for something specific, you've got to capture that so that can be celebrated. But if they're discussing with you something that has generated a negative perception of the brand, you've got to capture that. I mean, it would be a crime not to. And getting into the logistics and the specifics around the time, I mean, it's comical to me to think about the small price you pay to actually care about your customer enough to inherit their feedback and do something with it versus just literally letting it dissipate into space. I mean, we're talking about just it's a no-brainer in my mind. And yeah, okay, so there's a little bit of time associated with the documentation process and getting your agents involved in the solution. But I can tell you from experience, and not just from my own practitioner experience, but from helping others to implement this philosophy into their contact center, the call volume goes down because you're solving problems. And also, like, you're generating knowledge, like your knowledge base gets better. Your agents are retained because they're actually engaged and they're participating in solutions. So you're not having to waste as much time firing and hiring and training up new talent. I mean, there's so many aspects to, if you value your customers, if you do this, you inherit time back and value back. It comes to you.
So, and it sounds like the key to it all is just like surveys, right? We're capturing data, but we have to do something with it for it to become worthwhile.
Yeah.
I imagine there's also a concern perhaps around how accurate the data is. For example, you're asking the rep to decide a subjective evaluation of customer sentiment. This customer was happy, this customer was unhappy.
Yeah.
In your experience, how accurate is the rep in making that assessment? Oh, this customer was definitely ecstatic, this customer was unhappy.
If I were to put a value on it, just an assumed value, I would say about 80 to 90% accuracy. The vast majority of people that are doing this have a high degree of integrity and they want to represent the customer honestly. The challenge is there are some people that are stuck in a mode of not wanting to enter negative feedback. They're only wanting to enter positive feedback associated with their department and themselves. So that other 10, 20% that is getting missed, I haven't really seen cases, and we record calls. I mean, I can I can go back and find out, or would be able to see examples of this. I don't really think that people are like misdocumenting how the customer feels. It's not like the customer's really upset and they're putting in that they're neutral or happy. Like that's not going on. But what is going on is something where it was obvious where the customer is upset, something that should have been logged and is not getting logged. Either the rep is afraid of being a tattletale on somebody and or isolating an issue that otherwise would just kind of sweep under the carpet, and they would be putting a spotlight on it. And they're nervous to do that. And I get that mentality. It's funny, though, because if you think about the holistic nature of this program and the fact that it's not just for the contact center, people like to hold each other accountable in other areas, other functions. So people love to call their sales rep about customer support, and people love to call customer support about their sales rep. So if we're both on both sides of that equation, if we're capturing the customer's perception at both of those times, then we're getting a fuller depiction of what the customer is actually experiencing. But it requires a lot of integrity, and it's got to be a mature culture to do this.
You know, one of the things that you're describing, Nate, and I don't want this to get lost on anybody who's tuning into this, is that it's not just about the contact center. It's about looking at multiple touch points on the customer journey. And we need to be gathering data from multiple places. The other thing that strikes me is very important, and this is from my own experience. I find that people are very happy to share feedback if they believe it's being sincerely listened to and it's valued. And I find that the opposite is true if the feedback is just an exercise.
Right.
In other words, if I know I'm going to share this feedback about this customer and somehow it comes back to me that feedback is being used to make things better, I'm probably going to keep sharing it. If, on the other hand, it just becomes a finger-pointing exercise, or it's just a black hole alongside our service data, our survey data, we're probably not going to use it.
I mean, the only reason we were able to earn the right to have this program adopted and to grow was we tenaciously closed the loop with feedback that was put in there, and made a big deal about the employees that took the time to value their customer and put that feedback data in there.
So, Nate, if someone was thinking about implementing something similar in your organization, in their organization, I mean, I think you've outlined a few of the basic components. I like the tactile element of that button. You talked about creating a web form that feeds into where you're keeping all your other data, which
Yes.
is very important. And perhaps the most important piece is acting on this data, doing something with it. Is there any other advice that you would share with someone who's thinking about implementing something similar to capture this unstructured data from customers?
Yeah, I mean, you just outlined it perfectly. The only other thing is there's going to be project-based initiatives that come out of this feedback data that you're getting. You need to be able to improve the experience. So you need to be honest with yourself before you open the floodgates to listen better to your customers, which you're about to do. If you implement a system like this, I can guarantee you the quality and quantity of feedback data you will get will be maybe even overwhelming for you, which is awesome and very exciting if you have the ability to then go back and make changes inside of your organization. There has to be a change management vehicle. There's got to be people ready. Like I'm blessed in our organization. We've got an army of Lean Six Sigma black belts and green belts looking for projects. So we can tap into something like that. But you need to know and be ready. If we learn about what our customers need and we isolate how we can improve the journey for them, do we have the resources? Do we have the supporting processes to actually go back and make those changes? Otherwise, you're not ready to ask.
So, Nate, I feel like you're the coach and you're getting me fired up for the big voice of customer game. I'm ready to run through a wall like the Kool-Aid Man or something.
Yes.
I appreciate this. If we're running out of time, so if people want to find you and learn more, how do they track down Nate Brown?
Go to cxaccelerator.com. You're going to find me, and you're going to find a little team of us. Jeff, you've been amazing in that community. I mean, this is not just about the Nate Brown Show by any means. I mean, there's a group of us that are very passionate about customer experience and about the customer, and we want to help you to see better results in terms of your customer experience programs. So go over to CX Accelerator, join our community, learn from some of the resources out there. I do have a whole write-up on the CX magic button, as I called it on there. So if you want to get a little bit more detail there, don't hesitate to ping me. On every page on cxaccelerator.com, you got my cell phone. Text me, email me. I'll give you exactly where I ordered these buttons, and any other questions you've got, use me as a resource.
Nate, you've been super generous with your time and fun as always. Thanks so much for spending some time with me today.
Thank you, Jeff. My pleasure.